Welcome to the Wingman Show. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show, where we're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. My man, my friend, the guy who watches my six, Dr. Paul Thompson. How are you, Paul?
Morning, Mr. Drew. I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad to be back here. We've had like a little hiatus. I'm ready to get back in the saddle and do some more shows.
Oh, yeah, I'm fired up to do this one. Let's start off with a quote. Speak to others as if you lived in a glass house, because you do. Speak to others as if you lived in a glass house, because you do. And that just means don't be so judgmental. You like that quote, Dr. P?
Yeah, that's true. Because things can come back at you. And as far as the glass house, I'm thinking about just visual stuff because we're all under surveillance all the time. From the state and from other people. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got a high definition movie camera.
That's true. And you know what? If you don't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about.
That's right.
Okay. Well, Dr. Paul, I went on a cruise. And believe it or not, you and I have been on many cruises. And actually, this cruise was on the Constellation. Now, I landed my jet on a Constellation many times when I did carrier quals. But this Constellation was by Celebrity Cruise Lines, and it was out of Tampa, right across the street from where my son lives. They just watched me float away to the Caribbean. I had a great time. But I do want to talk about this cruise. It was a 12-day cruise. We started off going to the Cayman Islands, where they have the big stingrays, which I love. Then we went to Panama. Then we went to Cartagena, Colombia, which was the hottest place I've ever been. I mean, it was freaking hot and humid, and they said it didn't change. Then we went to Costa Rica, and then we went to Cozumel. Costa Rica is doing fine. 20 years ago, it was a lot cheaper in Costa Rica. Now they almost have American prices. But the thing about this cruise that really blew my mind, let me ask you first something. Dr. Paul, how old do you think the oldest bird in the world is?
Oh, 27.
Well, we have a bird named Wisdom. That's an albatross that's 71 years old. I could not believe it. There's a picture of him right now. But how about this one? What's the oldest living mammal on the planet?
What would it be? Would it be a whale? I don't know. Something, let's say 65 years old.
65 years old. Well, how about 191? Jonathan the tortoise. And the reason I'm talking about these old creatures is because I went cruising. And if you want to feel young again, Dr. Paul, just cruise with the elderly. There were a lot of elderly people on my cruise. And in the beginning, I thought there was, I'm not going to like this. I wound up loving it. I wound up loving it, Dr. Paul. These elderly people have a lot of wisdom. And that's called Time on Planet, TOP, Dr. Paul. So their stories were incredible. But then I watched them together, and, it brought a tear to my eye to watch these old people in love. There were couples that were still holding their hands, walking through the hallways. Something else that I didn't like is that a lot of them were in bad health, on mobile carts. They were driving around. They were overweight, obese. They didn't look very good. So there was a lot of things on this cruise, Dr. Paul, that really it was amazing. I really enjoyed being with older people. And, it's funny. We don't take care of the young and the old, yet we were all young, and hopefully we all will be old. So you need to talk to these elderly people. They have a lot of wisdom. What do you think, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It's interesting that you say elderly people. Where does elderly begin? I think we might fall into that. When I was teenager, I thought someone's elderly when they were like probably 40 or so. Elderly basically means somebody older than you. So I got a birthday coming up here in a couple of weeks. So elderly's about 15 years older than your present age. It's like a little mathematical formula, T plus 15 or A plus 15. But you said they're in bad physical shape. I was going to ask you how are they getting around? Those ships look pretty big from the ads that I see, the new ones.
There's a lot of those mobile carts that drive around those ships, and not all of them were in bad health. Some of them were in excellent health. Like there was a whole variety, but there were a lot of bad health people, a lot of people walking around with oxygen tanks. And that's all due to living in their earlier years and not living well. And, that's part of our show, Dr. Paul. We want to live well, we want to be healthy, and we want other people to live well and be healthy.
Right, right. So I always say, get up and move, but you need to keep yourself in a condition so that you can get up and move. So there's a lot of prior planning and day-to-day lifestyle stuff you need to do to take care of yourself, if you want to make it to the next day. Nobody wants to be in a wheelchair or confined or limited. You can't do everything you could do physically at the age of 17, but there's a lot of things that people can do in their 70s. I used to spar a couple people, and they're well into their 70s, and they're very, very fit. Unusual, but yeah, it can happen.
Yes, it can happen, but you got to start early. Matter of fact, you got to start now. That's the earliest time you can start is right now. The one thing that did bring a tear to my eye, though, I looked at them when they were dancing. They were doing some, we up at the disco, ballroom dancing, regular dancing. And I tried to look back at them, how they looked 50 years ago. And it was just amazing. But what really touched me is that there are a lot of older people in love with each other. And so I think it's so important not to be lonely. And if you have a wife or a husband, try to be happy with them. Try to find the good things in life with them. All right, Dr. Paul, look at those badass jets we got behind us. You have an F-4, and I have F-117s, night fighters. And the reason I love this word night fighter, remember when we went to SEER school, Dr. Paul?
Yes, I do remember quite well.
Yeah, they beat the shit out of us.
SEER, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape.
It was prisoner of war school is what it was, where they captured you and tortured you. So anyway, in SEER school, the enemy came around looking at me, and I was the only one black, obviously, out of all the pilots and everybody else in there. And he looked at me and he says, "You're a night fighter." And I thought that was the coolest word. I took a negative and made it a positive. And every time they came by me, I said, "Night fighter, night fighter."
Yeah. Well, I mean, the airplane behind you is the F-117 Nighthawk, so I guess you could have flown those too, but you'd have been perfect. Yeah, I had the same experience. It must have been an East Coast thing or something, maybe a West Coast thing.
Well, the plane is a Nighthawk, I'm sorry, but I was a night fighter. After SEER school, when they gave us an evaluation, they said by me doing that was one of the smartest things they've ever seen, because I took something that they tried to put me down with and made it positive. So they gave me some kudos on that. And I'm glad I did that SEER school, and I'm glad it was over. Yeah. Everybody out there, thank you so much for listening to us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Watch us on TikTok. Please, everybody, we have FaceTime. We're all out there. Watch us. Write a little review for us. It really will help us a lot. And don't forget our newsletter at wingmanshow.com. Wingmanshow.com. We have a frequent flyer part of that where you can ask us any question you want. And we have a question this week. My mother is smothering me. This is a 47-year-old man from Boca Raton, Florida. She has no boundaries. Please help me. This is a very serious thing. Parents can be very smothering, even as the children get older. And especially if it's a single parent, it can be very, very hard because they're putting their life into their children. The first thing, my advice is, are you showing them how much she does for you and how much she does do for you? Because most of this is just out of love. The smothering is out of love. How would you set boundaries, Dr. Paul? I mean, you and I have been through this kind of. My parents were kind of out of my business, and I don't butt into my children's personal lives until they ask me to come on in. Tell me
Yeah.
what you think.
That's the same with me too. You know, my parents were pretty much kind of hands off. They saw I was in a good direction. They didn't really say anything. Every once in a while, it might be a couple of like, you might think about this or that. But in terms of someone just covering you, that's tough. Now he said he's 47 years old. He's basically a middle-aged guy. You can probably assume that his mother is single, perhaps a widow, divorced, or whatever. It sounds like maybe she could benefit from a cruise that you just went on.
That's very true.
Something different. What's going on in her world? Does she have things to do? Does she have people to talk to? Are you the only one? Are you like the friend? So she doesn't have any boundaries because she may feel as though things are slipping away and she's not connected to anything, and you are the solid post there. So the thing is, not to push her away, certainly, but to perhaps expose her to other things and maybe tell her the way you feel. Start off with what you suggested, tell her how grateful you are for everything that she has done. And then, offer some other things that, have you ever considered doing this or doing that or going here or going there? I'd say try that.
Well, one thing is, I raised my children to realize that once they leave the nest, they need to form their own nucleus. And that means they have their own circle. And then they're out of our circle, even though they're included in our family. It's their circle, it's their nucleus. And what happens with not elderly, but older people, if they're lonely or they are divorced or, widowed, what they don't have is their life. And I think a good thing for a child to do is maybe start helping them get a life, either dating or going on cruises, but they have to get their nucleus back. Because remember, you were in their nucleus. You were their everything for a long, long time.
Right.
But I think Paul was right. The other thing about being grateful is you need to say it sometimes, not when you're asked, aren't you grateful? Yes, I love you. You're grateful. Sometimes say it without being asked. That's what I think. Be nice to your parents. Be nice to your parents. All right. Good news, Dr. Paul. Good news. There's bad news everywhere, but what if I told you that violent crime in Detroit and Chicago is down by it's a 60-year low. They're down double digits. We always talk about how bad things are. Well, violent crimes are actually going down. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I've seen those reports. There's a lot of scary stuff in the news, and that's what, if it bleeds, it leads, as opposed to if it's good, it should. But if it bleeds, it leads. So we know about the bizarre crimes, the horrible things that happen. A lot of stuff I think is coming that was pushed to the head from COVID and everything else. We're still kind of recovering from that isolation and the craziness that's kind of gone really through the world. But if you look at it, there's a lot of good things going on. You have high crime in the big cities, but really the highest crime increases have been in little places. Big cities get the bad rap, but look at these little towns. Some of these small towns are not as peaceful as some songs would indicate. So, that's just true. That's unfortunate. And I saw that when I was living in Tennessee. There was some really bad stuff, and it wasn't all in Memphis, strangely enough. So, how we live, what we do, how you raise your children, all those things are very, very, very important. Adults have a large part to play because a lot of the negative things we hear about involve young people. Adults too, but a lot of them are young people. What are they doing? Why are they cutting up? Why are they attacking teachers? Why are they doing these things? There's a lot that's going kind of wrong in the society, and there are a lot of people trying to make corrections. We don't hear about that, but for every horrible thing, there's probably about 20 good things that you'll never hear of. There are good people doing all kinds of things, saving people, getting them on the right path, getting them in careers. So don't just get wrapped up in social media and the headlines. Get off of that stuff and see what you can do to help yourself, help another person. Because one thing in this age, we have too much information, but you've got a lot of information and a lot of things you can do. You get off the YouTube and the stupid videos. Sometimes they're kind of fun, but don't make that, don't be addicted to negative stuff. Mainline some good things.
Yeah, well, too much information. There's something very wrong with bad information, and that's the problem I have. There's a lot of information out there, but you got to look and sift through what's good information and what's bad information. And how about this? Young people, fatal car crashes are way down too, and they're saying that's because of education, which I really like. So there are a lot of good things happening. Dr. Paul is 100% right. If it bleeds, it leads. Well, not here on the Wingman Show, because if it's good, it should. All right, Dr. Paul, you know what that brings us to?
That brings me to a Wingman PSA from the 11 Facts in Life under fact number 5. Education is necessary. Knowledge and wisdom are mandatory. Education is necessary. Knowledge and wisdom are mandatory.
And what I'm saying about that is you can have all the degrees you want. If you don't have common sense, you have nothing. Degrees are good to get you in the door. It's your knowledge that keeps you there. It's that wisdom that helps other people. Knowledge and wisdom are mandatory. You agree, Paul?
Yeah, agree. Yeah, keep learning. Look at something new every day. Crack a book or online or whatever. Read something. Reading is fundamental.
All right. How about this one? We're going to start doing the gouge. And the gouge is legal information. Dr. Paul and I try to give you the gouge, which means some cool stuff that you should know, or like we say, some shit you should know.
Mhm.
But we're going to do the top 20 destinations in the world. And I'm going to let Dr. Paul start off with the first top 10.
Okay,
Dr. Paul, take it away.
all right, the first top 10. I'm familiar with most of these places. So, okay, number 1 is Paris, France. Very nice place.
Love it.
Number 2, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Also enjoyed my time there. Number 3, Madrid, Spain. Only been there once for a few hours. Tokyo, Japan, a lot. Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Berlin, Germany is number 6. Rome is number 7. Never been to Rome. Your city, New York City. New York is number 8. It says New York, but they're not talking about New York State, they're talking about New York City. Next one, number 9 is Barcelona, Spain. Probably the best roast chicken I ever had was in Barcelona. And number 10 is London, England. Those are the first 10.
I've been to many of those too, just like you said. I'm going to Barcelona in April. I can't wait to go there. My son and my daughter have been there, and they said it is the bomb. My son actually said he would live there if he could. All right, I'm going to bring you from 11 to 20. Number 11, this town here that Dr. Paul and I have been to, Singapore. At 3 o'clock in the morning, you can walk around with $100 bills stuck to your head and nobody will bother you, because they have something in their criminal justice system called caning, where they will spank your ass. After Singapore, it's Munich, then Milan, where Dr. Paul and I have been many times, Seoul, where we've been many times, Dublin, Ireland, which I have not been to, Osaka, Japan, Hong Kong, one of Dr. Paul's favorite places, great food there, Vienna, Los Angeles, and Lisbon. And I can't wait to go to Portugal. Those are the top 20 cities in the world, destinations. One thing that I did learn, Dr. Paul, and I'm sure you did too, is that when we go to all these different countries, they all speak different languages. But one of the best ways to ingratiate yourself into the culture is to try to learn how to at least say please and thank you in those languages. Because it seems like when you're in another country and you try to speak their language, they really appreciate that, and they treat you in a whole different way, that you don't think your language is the only language. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That does work. You know, please and thank you work everywhere. Uh, you know, some Americans have gotten into the trend of being angry at people who speak different languages in the US. I'm not sure where that comes from. That's not that that's kind of bizarre. And the reality is that most people around the world speak very good English because English is a primary language of commerce and technology, really. So if I mean, I don't think I've run into anyone in Paris, for example, that didn't speak English.
That's
Yeah.
true. And you know, to fly an airplane internationally, you must speak English.
Yes, you must be English proficient. That's the fact it's got that on our licenses. That's a new thing. You got to be proficient in English. So everything is weighted in English. So it's easy to shut off everything else from your mind. But again, as we said on, previous episodes, if you learn a foreign language or if you just do a few words, like Commander Drew is saying, please and thank you, whatever, you're activating different parts of your brain. You're doing a good mental exercise. It's not a lot, but work on the please and thank you. It'll help. No one will ever criticize you for that. Though this even if you mispronounce it, they'll smile and nod their head typically.
Yeah, you should see me count in Chinese. Sun Zu. And when I say that to a Chinese person, they look at me like I'm crazy because they do not expect me to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I was with you one time and you were doing that. I think we were buying speakers. And you had this full conversation, and I could tell. I said, "Does he really speak? Either he speaks Mandarin fluently, or he's making this all up." That was my thought. I could be wrong.
No, I was speaking a little bit. I
Okay.
asked and I learned. I like doing that.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Do you remember in the street when we used to play football, Dr. Paul? You know, you go down to the car, make a left, go by the bumper, and I'll hit you there.
Yeah. Right.
It was kind of our versions of flag football because all you had to do was tag the guy. Well, now there's flag football. Have you ever played flag football?
No, I've seen it done a couple of times. I don't see it that much. I've seen it in parks, like in the Boston area, as I recall. That's where I saw most guys
Well,
play.
guess what? You're going to see it a lot. It's an Olympic sport in 2028. What do you think about that?
I wonder if pro football players can take part in that, or it's got to be amateur, I guess.
No, not anymore because we got pro basketball players that play in the
That's
Olympics now.
that's right. You're right. You're right. The dream team. Okay.
That's right. So flag football, and I'll tell you something, as much as America loves football, I think if you want to be safe, just take away the helmets.
Yeah.
Like rugby. You
Right.
won't get concussions. You're not going to use your head as a weapon anymore.
Yeah.
That would be a natural instinct. But anyway, flag football in the 2028 Olympics. This is a very special thing. Dr. Paul and I are, we have a lot in common. And one of the things we have in common is that we're both only children. Well, my little sister, or actually it's Lori's sisters, which I take on as my sisters, but we were in a wedding in Puerto Rico, and she's told me something that I could not believe, but she said, you don't know how special you used to make me feel as a child. And I always I tried to make them feel special, but I had no idea the impact. But see, she comes from a family of seven siblings. You and I come from a family of one sibling.
Mhm.
She told me something, and I want to pass this on because it's true. Only children talk to adults a lot easier and quicker than children that have a bunch of siblings, because only children like Dr. Paul, myself, my wife Katrina, only children only talk to adults their whole life. When they're growing up, we don't take adults as always the enemy. Where I think that if you're in a large family, whenever a grown-up says something, he's the boss and he's angry, or it's orders and you have to do it. What do you think about that, Paul? I think that's very interesting that we learn to speak to adults a lot quicker than people who grow up in large families with a bunch of siblings.
Yeah, that's why when you say he comes in angry, I thought of the drill instructor. That's the first thing that went through my head. Yeah, and that may not be the case, but I guess there's some truth to it. I never thought about it like that. But for the most part, you're not. I don't remember being around what people would call baby talk. I don't really have any memory of that. everything's, learn to speak and speak back in a, in a normal way. So I hadn't really given that too much thought, but that's interesting. I don't know any other advantages that only children have, other than that you probably learn to be independent a little quicker, perhaps, because you may be on your own. In some ways, I was on my own for a lot of stuff, and just develop curiosity and learning modes without having to be instructed every step of the way. 'Cause sometimes there's nobody out there. And other friends playing, they didn't know any more than you do, and probably about a third of them were only children also. So we kind of grew up and learned together. One thing about only children, they don't have any sibling rivalry because there's no siblings to rival with. So it always amazes me to see that, even in my own family, a sibling rivalry. I have no experience with that. I look at it as like somebody hitting a home run or doing some athletic play. Wow, look at that. Can't really relate to it. Can't do that. Never had that kind of problem. But yeah, I see it with very, very young children and people who are well into their 80s. They're Hatfields versus the McCoys, but they're in the same family. So, and you shouldn't. I don't think you should do that. I can say that as an outsider.
Well, there are a lot of advantages to being an only child. First of all, Hanukkah and Christmas. I got all the presents, every single one. Everything under that tree, I got because they were mine, because I was the only one. I didn't have to share my Christmas or Hanukkah presents. But another good thing is I could play with myself. I don't mind being by myself if I have to. Another thing that I learned how to do is I can get into almost any environment and get along with people. Because when you're an only child, you're all by yourself sometimes, and you have to learn how to move and groove wherever situation or whatever situation you're in. So I love that about being an only child. The things I don't like is that nobody can share your grief with you. Like when my parents' bodies passed away from this earth, there was nobody that could tell me, nobody, I know how you feel. I didn't want to hear that because you don't know how I feel, but a sibling would. And the last thing, Paul and I always talk about this. Doc, we're amazed when sisters and brothers don't talk to each other, or when they're mad or they're mean or there's rivalry or any of that. All I ever wanted was a brother or sister. And the last thing I thought of, and we talked about this just yesterday, we never thought of having a bad brother or a bad sister. We only thought of great ones, older or younger, but we never thought of them being bad.
Yeah, I agree. And, but there are a good number, many who are bad brothers and brothers, sisters and sisters who are battling right now. It could be for, a whole host of things. It may be bad memories that go back to their childhoods.
Money has
money a lot. Or, somebody liked you better, or something that went down, 75 years ago, and they're still peeved over it with each other. That's unfortunate. So I don't miss never having that kind of experience. Again, I observe it. Say, wow.
Well, the show's called The Wingman Show because we talk about people doing good things. And we were just talking about only children. Well, foster kids are kind of only children. And how about this wingman? So there's this principal named Jason Smith. And outside his door one day was this young girl sitting there because she got sent to the principal's office. This is in 6th grade. And he told her to come in, and he found out that she threw a yogurt at somebody during lunch. So she's been in trouble quite a bit, and she's a foster child. So he asked her, do you think this kind of behavior is acceptable in a restaurant? Dr. Paul, she told him, I've never been to a restaurant. Well, that perked up his ears. He went back to his wife, Mary Beth, and they discussed it. And believe it or not, they took this girl in as a foster child. Now, the girl's name is Raven Whitaker. Raven, when she was taken in by them, first of all, she thought the principal was mean, an authoritarian figure like we talked about. And believe it or not, she tested them, Dr. Paul. She actually acted a little bit bad to see if they were going to kick her out like every other foster parent did. Because what happens is She didn't trust people anymore because everybody started off, hi, come on in. The rest of your life is going to be great. And most people just left and she'd had to go to another foster home. Well, I want to tell you that this young lady was adopted by Jason and Mary Beth Smith. And not only was she adopted, she started doing good in school. She now just graduated from the University of Tennessee, and she's an active, productive person in our society. God bless you, Jason and Mary Beth Smith, for being our Wingman of the Week. Dr. Paul, whatever you think is important, whatever you and our listeners think is beautiful, and whatever you and our listeners, whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace.
And I pray for peace too. And to all those who listen, like, and subscribe, and share our message, we appreciate you. Please continue to do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like. It helps with the algorithm. And hit the notification button so you'll get an alert every time we put out a new episode.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.